Okay, well, welcome to the October 2022 Planetarian Zoom workshop. And today we have Jeff Nee, who many of you already know from the Museum and Informal Education Alliance over at JPL. And he's going to be doing this workshop about blending videos. That's a video editing workshop for DOMs and informal educators using Blender.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for anyone watching the recording in the future. And I just want to point out that if you would like your own presentation, we do this for Alan and for the PPA all the time, but we'd love to do one for you too and for your team. Just let us know what you need. If you don't have the slides right now, the short link is right at the very top. It is case sensitive, so you can type that right in there. But there's also in the presenter notes, I've written an obscene amount, and that's because I've gotten feedback where planetarians have said, yes, they prefer copious amounts of comments and notes as opposed to too few. So hopefully this isn't swinging too far on the excessive side, but I did write basically a full script. I made the slides specifically so that you could work at your own pace. So just before we even get started, I do need to say the disclaimer that NASA does not endorse or support Blender in any way. We'll also reference some other third-party content, which again is not endorsed or supported by NASA in any way. Any opinions are my own personal ones, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of NASA. And Blender is really just one possible tool that I encourage people to use to take advantage of all of NASA's free and public resources. So without further ado, we're going to go to slide number 2 for those of you following along at home. Slide number 2, now you're already here, so you don't need this slide. But I like making it, I like including it, because the whole point is that I'm hoping that some of you at least will take these slides and actually turn around and create your own curriculum out of it for your own audiences. And so just in case you ever get those teenagers who, their parents signed them up for your summer camp and they don't really want to be here, and you need some way to motivate them. You need some way to engage them and get them interested in what you have. And so this slide is just a quick thing of why video editing. And again, the presenter notes are copious. So really quickly on to slide number 3, specifically why Blender for video editing. Again, if you're here right now listening to my voice, you don't need me to go over the slide. But I do like to point out that if you already have a video editor that you like, there's really no reason to switch to Blender. But if you are ever interested in a different one that is completely free, yet professional grade, I'm just here to make the case that Blender is certainly worth a try for your next video editing project. That's all. So, and especially with the latest updates and with the latest add-ons and everything, I've found Blender video editing to be much, much improved, literally just in the past year, just since we've started these workshops, right, Alan? I think we started last year.
Jeff,
Let's see. Yep,
Jeff,
go ahead.
I have a question. This is Bob.
Hi, Bob. Go ahead.
I've got a new iMac, new this year, and I've been using Keynote to make my presentations. How would you compare Blender with Keynote?
I've seen Keynote before. I haven't used it myself. And what I can tell you is, like I said in the beginning, I would say that if you like Keynote and it works for you and it does everything you could possibly want, then there's absolutely no reason to switch to Blender, right? However, if there is something that you wish Keynote could do, I bet you Blender could do it. Does that make sense, Bob?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so if there's something that oh, I wish Keynote did this, or I wish this was faster, or I wish I could take this video and do this with it, I am relatively confident that Blender can do it if Keynote can't. Okay?
Got it. Thanks.
Got it. Okay, great. So moving on to slide number 4. This is just a quick tip that if you're kind of tired of updating Blender all the time, because actually this was a question that came up in one of the earliest ones, how often does Blender update? They update pretty regularly. There's a really decent team that's making sure Blender is as good as it possibly can be at any given moment in time. So if you're kind of tired of doing that constant updating, there is a tip that the Blender team says on their own website of, they call it auto magic updates, quote unquote. And it's just a way to install it once and never have to worry about updating again. So this also has a couple of other advantages that we might go into later in the advanced slides. All right, on to slide number 5, really, really quickly. Okay, we're just going to start right away. So if you have Blender open, you just open Blender, double click Blender. Let's say you're just opening it for the very, very first time. This is kind of what you'll see. You'll see the splash screen. I included this as a whole separate dedicated slide because Blender changes so much and has so much depth that there will always be something new to discover for you. Always. There will always be some shortcut or some workflow that one day someone will say, oh, you can do it, just do it this way. And it will make you feel like you never knew Blender at all. Right? I talk to many, many people who feel like we've done Blender for 10 years and we still feel like beginners. Right? This is absolutely true for me, and it's true for a lot of people. So if you feel that way, please know that A, you're not alone, and B, this is actually a really great learning opportunity. Like that's one of the most exciting things for Blender for me, is that I'm always learning new things in Blender, and that's just personally exciting to me as an educator and as a human being, to be honest. So the one that I discovered literally in the last month was that you can get to the video editor in just one click. I used to be doing 3 or 4 different clicks, and it's right there on the splash screen. I don't know why I never noticed it before, but it's right there on the splash screen. And you can also go to the File, New, and Video Editing workspace. Now, I'm going to go on to slide number 6 very quickly. Now, saving 3 or 4 clicks doesn't sound like that much, but if you do it through the splash screen or through the File, New menu, it also deletes all the other workspaces, which is super helpful if you're just focusing on video editing. And that's another 20 clicks. And it also sets default output properties. It sets color management settings, all for video editing specifically. And so it's not just saving you a couple seconds, it's really saving you a lot. If and when you teach Blender to your students, always be prepared for them to discover or simply know something that will just completely blow your mind and make you feel like a complete novice. And again, like I said, when that happens, it's a great learning opportunity. And I like to use it as a perfect opportunity to address the entire institution of imposter syndrome, of why am I even here teaching this if I don't feel like I'm qualified as an expert? But I'll say again, no one has all the answers. And we as educators know that. And that's why I love informal education so much, because we just provide the time and the space, and most importantly, the community to explore and learn together, right? I don't present myself as some sort of Blender know-it-all. I don't know everything, but I know a little bit, and I'm happy to share. And I would love to learn from you just as much as you learn from me. And I really, really want to hear from you. In fact, I would say that I want to hear from you way, way, way more than you want to hear from me. And your knowledge, your discoveries, and of course your questions are much more important to me than literally anything else that I have prepared to say today. So with that, now is a good time to actually pause for any questions or comments, if anyone has any.
This is Rosemary.
Hi, Rosemary.
Thanks a lot for doing this. Would you be careful to explain terminology as you go along?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you have a question about something that I mentioned offhand?
No, I glanced at some of the slides and found there were things that technical terms I didn't really know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear. So if I'm taking for granted, and this is really important for me too, if I'm taking for granted a vocab word, please stop me and ask me to define it. It's likely that I didn't even notice. When we get to those points, please point it out to me. Okay. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Actually, Jeff, I just wanted to thank you very much for your support and helping me with my efforts going forward. I really, truly appreciate it. The Blender, the new Blender that was downloaded is quite different than the old Blender.
Yes.
So it's quite updated. But I do want to be cognizant that it's different from a Windows 8.1, which is no longer being supported by Windows Microsoft for 2023, year 2023. And then also individuals that may have a Mac an Apple Mac, that's completely different. So as opposed to a Microsoft Windows 10 or 11. So that does make a huge difference in what we do.
Yeah, and Dave was mentioning this earlier, that if you have an outdated OS, and of course if you have the budget to get a new machine, I would highly say that that's a good investment for working, period. And if you don't have the budget for a new machine, one thing that you can do is try and install Linux on it. Linux is completely free. The latest updates for Linux have really come light years from just a few years ago. So if you haven't looked at Linux in a while, I would highly recommend that you do that. And by all accounts, Linux actually runs Blender better than Windows or Mac. So you'd actually be getting a leg up performance-wise too, in addition to cost savings. So always feel like, so just to know that there are options out there. And if you have any specific details, please just ask, and I'll help you as much as I can. All right, so let's go ahead and skip to slide number 7. All right, so VSE, the Video Sequence Editor, is the official name. One thing that I've discovered is called the Power Sequencer. It's a little add-on, and this slide just shows you how to get the Power Sequencer, the quote-unquote add-on. That's just a little add-on program that Blender has. And Blender has a whole bunch of them. There's a whole library of add-ons, and each of them do something really cool, but the one that we're interested in today is called Power Sequencer. So you just go through the steps, you go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then there's a little search bar. You search for Sequencer. You don't even have to type in the whole word, and then you check the box, and that's pretty much it. It's that easy.
Jeff, excuse me, this is Greg Donahue.
Yeah. Hi, Greg, what's up?
Hey, I just was working through this earlier, and I got to the Power Sequencer, and I guess you might have answered my question, but I want to be sure. Yep. I see an install button up there. I thought we had to install this.
That's a great question. So the install button is for if you want an add-on that is not initially part of Blender.
Oh, okay, all right.
Does that make sense? And actually that comes in the advanced slides. If you skip out of the advanced slides, we have to install an add-on later. But so Blender comes with a whole library of add-ons, but other people, third parties, make their own add-ons. Because Blender is open source and free, you can make whatever add-on you want. And if you don't want to go through the bother of getting it approved into the Blender community officially, then you just publish it and say, here, people install it yourselves, right? Okay. Yeah, so that's what that's for.
So the checkbox is all that's needed to get that. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for asking. Okay, slide number 8. Kind of just to emphasize that one of the reasons why I personally use Blender for video editing over all the other ones, there are lots of reasons, but one of them is because I can customize Blender to look and feel and act exactly the way that I want. There is literally nothing stopping me from customizing Blender to my little heart's content. So if I want this window gone, if I want this window bigger, if I want this section in this workspace, I can do all of that. As a beginner, I feel like you don't have to really worry about that because you have these workspaces, the video editing workspace, and the default is perfectly fine if you're a beginner. But as you're working, as you're doing your projects, you're going to find, oh, I wish I had this, or I wish I could see this while I'm doing this project. And I just want to make sure you know that it is probably very easy to do. And if you really, really wanted to, you could program in a Python if you really wanted to do something like that. But the point is that it's very customizable. So these are just a couple things I wanted to mention. I don't want to go into too many details, but I did want to mention the playback menu on the bottom left that has options such as scrubbing audio when you're playing it, when you're previewing it. It'll like play the audio as you're previewing it. And then there are just an innumerable number of keyboard shortcuts. And later on, I'm actually going to teach you how to make your own keyboard shortcuts just because you want to. And the one that I'm highlighting here is the control space, especially for people like Alan who have small screens. If you want to make just one area of Blender bigger and maximize and really focus on it, it's a really simple toggle. It's control space. That's also not a very intuitive one. Control Z is really intuitive. Everyone has that. But control space isn't very intuitive, so I like to highlight that, especially for people who are working on really small laptop screens. And the orange areas are advanced if you didn't quite catch that. Slide number 9, very quickly. Okay, this is our first actual activity that we're going to do. So if you have the sample files, this is the sample file marked 1 frames to video, and it's like a little dot blend. You basically just double click the dot blend file, the number 1 frames to video file, and you should see something like this. And this is just teaching you how to add image frames. So what is a video really? It's just a series of still images played back at a specific frames per second. So this first activity is super basic. And if you're following along, as if you're going to take some dome masters and make them into a movie file, you just add a whole bunch of images to it, and Blender will actually do that for you. So you open it, and the reason I made these sample files is just to save time, because I've preset some of the settings in this file to kind of how I would like to do it. And on the right-hand side there, you'll see all the different options that I've chosen for us. For example, I've chosen a 1 frame per second movie, and I've only made it 5 frames long, just because I wanted to keep this to something that you could actually download in a few seconds. On to slide number 10. After you've added those images, so you should now have a quote unquote strip that contains all the images that you had added. And you can think of it as a literal physical strip of film, as if you had like those old movie reels. Now, do note that Blender does try to be a little smart about this. If you add a bunch of images all at once, it assumes that you're adding frames. So for example, if you had a folder of Dome Masters and you added all of them into one strip, it would assume that you are adding frames to a full movie. But if you add 1 image at a time, it'll think that you're trying to do like a presentation style, and it will give you just 1 strip per image, and it'll make it a little bit longer too. All right, and then the blue line is your current frame, which is what's shown in the preview area above. Now, if you're here, left and right arrows move you 1 frame at a time, or you can just click the little bar at the top, the little seconds, and the frame numbers at the top to skip around and jump around. And you can also click and drag the middle of the strip to wherever you can move it to different channels. And each channel is supposed to be kind of like layers in a Photoshop feel, where the top ones cover up the ones on the bottom. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. And then on the sides, you'll notice that they're slightly darker on the sides, and those are called handles. And you just click and drag to move them around. You can extend a film strip. You can also compress it and trim it, and you can do a whole bunch of other stuff with those handles as well. And on the right-hand side of that area, you'll notice a whole bunch of windows. That one's called the sidebar. And it's a whole bunch of windows that just do exactly what they say. So you can transform a video, you can crop it, you can reorder the video frames, you can change the color, you can change the timing, you can have really exact control over exactly the timing of each strip.
How do you add music?
How do you add music? That's the next slide, I think. That's a good question. That's the next slide. In fact, that's a good transition. Thanks, Tish. We are on slide number 11, and this one is how to add the sound. Now, if you add an actual movie, an actual like MP4, the sound will come with it automatically. But this is, for example, again, if you have a Dome Master and then you have the soundtrack, you'll need to add them separately. And then same thing, it's just another strip that Blender can work with. You can move it around, you can trim it, you can cut it, whatever you want. And for sound specifically, I've highlighted over on the side, there's a little checkbox that says display wave form, if you can see it in the sidebar. And if you just check that, it'll just show you the squiggly lines. That means that it's sound. And while you're here, this is a good opportunity to see what other possibilities you can add later. For example, you can add color, you can add text, you can add different effects like speeding up and slowing down. You can add fades, crossfades, and there's a whole menu right there under the add menu that you can explore. Now, before I give you some free exploration time, though, I want to show you just one more thing. So slide number 12 is what we're on. Now, other than moving strips around and manipulating the handles and stuff, the next most common thing you're going to need is you're going to need to cut them. And that you can find in the strip menu. The strip menu has a whole bunch of other things. In fact, there are actually two different kinds of cuts. And just to make it super simple, the keyboard shortcut is the letter K, as in kilo, and it will cut all the selected strips at wherever that little blue cursor is, at wherever that current frame is. And so just make sure your proper strips are selected, and you should see that they're highlighted, and then press K, and then it should cut everything where you want it. That way you basically turn them into two strips, and you can manipulate them however you want. You can even delete them and remove them. Now, before people ask, the hold split, it's also known as a hard cut. It's akin to physically cutting a strip of film, in that if you hard cut it, if you do, what is it? It's Shift K, I think, Shift K. I've kind of covered up a little bit, but Shift K. If you cut it physically, if you hard cut it, it means all of the data that you cut is gone. Whereas a soft cut, all the regular split, it actually keeps that data. So you can actually recover that data later if you need to. But a hard cut is also really important. For example, the one that I use most is speeding up and slowing down a strip. That's when you need the hard cut. You need to say, this is the amount of data that I need right now, and don't look at anything else. And so you hard cut it, and then you can speed it up or slow it down. So I think now is a good chance for some free exploration time.
Yeah, this is all great stuff. And with respect to music, a lot of the music to implement is from the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, their SBS files. So giving them credit in the video content for, doing a presentation and such.
Yep.
If we wish to do something like I do adaptive services for blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, and data sonification that I want to do. I have a universal MIDI controller to implement, like with the stars that you have the deep, the image that you have of the deep sky from the James Webb Space Telescope.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those different, as we get further and further deep in, and we're researching with the vast metadata that's coming back, I want to be able to make data sonification implemented as we go forward.
That's great. And in fact, you don't have to make it. The Chandra X-ray Observatory has already done. Have you seen it? No? Well,
I've seen some of them that they have been doing so, but I do understand that there's like a Norlab and Henry Trey Winter that I've spoken with.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's a set protocol that we need to follow, but there's also like the eclipse that you have over to your right side. There's the eclipses from 2023, 2020, 24. And I have the 2017 data of all the eclipses, but I want to implement them. And with Blender, I want to incorporate my own sounds.
Sure. In fact, if you're interested in data sonification, there is a great tutorial online by Matt Russo. That one you might want to write down. I can't remember exactly what his link is, but Matt Russo is actually the one who's responsible for the most recent NASA's data sonification. So if you saw the Chandra ones, he goes into very, very, very strong detail about exactly how he does what he does. So yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, so Matt Russo, Russo, is his name. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, and I'm really excited to see what you come up with. Really.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So if you're interested in making your own data sonifications, of course, for the rest of you who just want to grab the sonifications and put it into something, that's super easy too. You basically, how I would do that is I would take the original NASA video, bring it into Blender just to get the soundtrack, and just delete their video. and put in your own video, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's super easy. You can mix and match, cut around, edit however you want. That's the whole point of this workshop.
Hey, it's Doug. Yeah. When I select, when I go to the images and I type A, it selects all of them.
Yeah.
And then when I hit enter, it only adds one at a time.
Yeah, if you want to share your screen, please do.
So if we just go add
image sequence, good.
Cursor right here.
Okay, click A.
A.
There you go. That's it. Now click. Now all the way. Now enter. Can you? I wonder if enter will just work.
See,
there it goes. That's it.
It just added one sequence.
Yes. Okay. So this is the thing. If you scroll up. There you go. There you go. So this is what I meant when I said Blender tries to be smart about it. So because you added all of them, it assumes they're all frames of one movie.
All right.
So if you actually go into that strip, and actually just hit the right arrow, There you go. There you go.
I see. I see.
Yeah. So it added each image as its own frame.
I went and added each one individually.
Yes. So that's what I mean. So this is actually a great example of how Blender tries to be intelligent. So Doug was adding one image at a time, and it said, "Oh, Doug must want this image to last for like, I don't know, how much is it? Like 2 seconds, right?" So that's that. And if you wanted to cut those images, that one strip that has all the images in it, you can. So
I could just,
you just basically go to like frame two, and then hit K. Frame 3, hit K.
Go back there.
Yeah. And hit K. There you go. Yeah.
But
so that's how you can do it.
But that hasn't cut it yet. What do I have to do then?
It's cut already. It's cut already. So now the first image is a separate entity.
Oh, I see. I see. It turns it into a separate image.
Yep. It turns into a separate strip.
Yeah, separate strip. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
And so, for example, when I was talking about the batch image processing, I do that because if I have different sized images, I'm going to want to transform them differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to. So all the transform options apply to each strip, which is a little confusing, I know, but it'll come eventually as you work with it.
Yeah, if I wanted to have one, let's say I wanted to have some music, and I wanted this image here to last longer.
Yeah, so you just take that. There you go. Perfect. You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. That was good illustration.
Yeah.
And
if you click the display waveform, you can actually see where you can visualize where the music starts and where it stops. On the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, there's a little checkbox that says display waveform.
Right, there it is. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. And then do it with the other one too. So you can see it's silent almost that entire view. So if you scroll down, and keep going. There's a lot of dead space in there. There you go. Then you can see where the music starts.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
And
I see it.
And just click and drag until the music is where you want it to be, basically.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah.
But it won't overwrite the strip. So you see how it's red? It won't overwrite that strip. So you'll have to delete that initial strip. If you scroll in a little bit more, scroll up a little bit more. Do you see how you have two music strips, one at the beginning and one at the end? Right where your current frame is at. So there you actually have two strips there.
Right.
You can delete that one. Yeah. Now you can freely move that one and move it wherever you want.
Okay.
There you go. Because it again, Blender tries to be smart about it, and it tries not to let you shoot yourself in the foot, right? Yeah. And so it tries to be a little smart about it, but it can be a little confusing.
Okay. Ron has his hand up.
Yeah, Ron, go ahead.
Just a time-saving tip on the last question. Yeah, let's say you're in a situation where, like previously, we've added multiple frames, and they all came in as one strip. And what you can do is click on that strip, then you can right-click the strip, and there's a option in there called, it is called Separate Images.
Separate Images, right here.
And you click that, and then it'll say length. And the length is how many frames you want that to be. So I say, okay, maybe I want each one to be half a second long. I'd put in 15 and say, okay. And then it breaks those out for me into 15 frame lengths.
There it goes. I just chose one just because in
Sure.
this instance. Yeah.
But that's a way
there
to
it goes.
Ron has a lot of experience in this,
Yeah.
I think.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thanks for
John.
sharing, Ron. Rosemary, did you have a question?
Yes. So what you're demonstrating now is like if you had masters and you were trying to create the sequence for film, but if you're trying to do more of a slideshow and you want a smooth transition, you know, some fading in and out between images, is this the right program for that? Or
Yes.
just
Let me show you this one. Let me share this one again. So I'm on slide number 11. If you're following along, under the Add menu, at the very bottom, do you see the word fade?
Use your pointer.
Yeah, I'll use my pointer
cursor?
here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Fade. That's where you can add fades for each individual strip. You can adjust the timing of the fades and all of that. In fact, let me show you real quick. In this one, so I'm going to here's my live blender. Can you see my live blender? Okay. So here's the nice Carina Nebula, and I can do add a fade, and it can ask me, I can do fade in and out. I can just do a fade in, fade out, and a whole bunch of other things. Let's do fade in and fade out. And then you can see it tries to visualize the fade. So it fades in nicely, and then it fades out nicely. And I can adjust that, of course. In fact, let's try that now. And at the bottom left, there's a little thing that says add fades. And right now it's set to 1 second. 1 second. But I can change that to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, as long as I want. Does that make sense, Rosemary?
Yeah. So when you talk about a strip, normally I think of the strips as being the vertical strips, but right now when you're talking about strips, you're talking about these frames that are stripped, but
they're
adjacent to
horizontal,
each
yeah.
other on one
They're
line.
horizontal, yeah. So I guess that's a little counterintuitive, yes. Yeah. Because there is the vertical dimension. For example, let me show you that real quick. If I move it to here, in fact, let's just make this a little bit bigger. So right now, what's going on is I'm going to view, and I'm going to frame everything. And so now it's gotten a little smaller, but you can see I can have as many channels as I want. And what it does is that whatever's up here will cover up whatever's on the bottom. And literally as if you had layers of film. Okay. And so if you take a look, if I go right here to frame 3, what's happening is that this image is on top, but I did add a fade. So it's just barely visible. And you can actually just barely see it right over here. In fact, let's hide it so you can see the difference. Do you see the difference? Yeah, H is the key keyboard shortcut for hide. H for hide.
So this is different than if you were to add transparency amounts to each channel. What you're doing right now is doing it with a fade in and fade out.
Yes, I'm doing that right now with the fade in, fade out. But if I wanted to do transparency, that's here. In fact, that's how it's doing.
Yeah.
If you look, it's animating the opacity, the transparency of it. So you can see that opacity number decreasing as I go, and then and then right here it should be all the way to 1. Yeah, there it goes. So now it's fully visible, and then you fade it back down. That's how it's doing it, and that's the opacity property right here.
John has his hand up.
Well, I was just thinking about fading and how cross fading is nice, and I didn't see a option for that. But then I realized that you could put your pictures in different channels and overlap them, and I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah,
so
you
that
can.
could have
There
like-
is a separate crossfading
Is there?
feature. Yeah. So to crossfade, all you have to do is just, you have these two strips and you want to crossfade between them. You select the first one, shift select the second one, and then add transition cross. And that's it. You can even adjust it on the fly once it's added. And the order that you select them does matter. So you select the first one and then the second, then shift select the second one, then add the cross. If you do it the other way, it'll mess it up, or it'll do something different rather. So just watch out for that. I mean, that brings me to a great point of, if you want to do something in Blender, there's a really, really, really good chance somebody has already figured out how to do it. So you just look it up. You just look up how to do crossfading in Blender. Now
So
that's my
just-
notes.
Just to ask, cross blending means one fades out as the other fades in? Is
Yes.
that- Okay.
Yes, so
Yeah.
they
Thank you.
overlap.
Yeah.
And as I figured out, you could put them in different channels and do that.
Yeah, and you know, there are, like any computer program, there are almost an infinite number of ways to do the same thing.
Right.
Right. And so whether you do it manually or whether you figure out this new cool workflow that somebody created, whatever works for you, I'm a pragmatist. Whatever works for you is great. It's perfect, right? And as long as it looks the way you want it to look and acts the way you want it to act. But do keep in mind that if you're finding something tedious in Blender, there is a good chance somebody else has found it tedious, and there's a good chance that somebody else has found a solution for it, right? You know, just
Okay.
just as the example we have right now, like I was having Doug click the right arrow, click K, click the right arrow, click K, which is fine if you have 5 frames, but what if you had 50,000, right? You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to do that. And Ron's method works perfectly. Great.
So Greg has his hand up.
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Yes, or while you've got these separate strips here on a channel, I have been trying to figure out how do you join strips back together, and I'm baffled.
Yeah. Is there a join? I think there is a join. And I tell people to just you know, here. I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, but there is a way to group ones. So you say make a meta strip. So under the strip menu, make a meta strip. Let's see what that does. There, they're all joined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's like
So-
you'd said you might need to separate something, cut it a couple times, manipulate a section of it to slow it down, speed it up. Then you'd want to possibly put that back together for your final presentation is what I'm thinking about.
Well, for something like that, I would say don't join them, because here's what that means. Instead of joining them, just make sure there's no gap.
Make sure okay.
Yeah, because that's kind of what you mean, right? Because you want it to be smooth from one section to another, and they will do that. Again, all this is just one frame after another. So as long as you don't have any gaps, like for example, if I move them here, then there's a gap, and then that's not smooth, right? And it's actually better to keep them separate, because what if you need to adjust it by like 1 microsecond, right? Then you have to separate them all, adjust it, and then join them all together. Yeah, if you don't have to join it, I would recommend not doing that.
Okay.
Just make sure they're all positioned the way that you want them to. Yeah. But it is possible to join. So we are now on slide 14. For anyone following along, we're on slide 14. And this one is just kind of a demo file. I didn't really want you to do anything with this one. I just wanted to include it as a demo file to say that you can go the other way too. So we went image frames to a video, but you can also go take a video and split it up into frames. And the use case for this would be if someone has dome masters that they want to send you. Now, of course, the traditional way is to send them a hard drive, like physically mail them a hard drive to get their 100 gigabytes or 200 gigabytes of dome masters, and they physically mail it back. But with Blender, you can compress all those dome masters into something that you can actually transfer over online very easily, or rather more easily. Once you get the video file, you can extract back all the dome masters. Now, of course, the best results will always be to physically mail them a hard drive, get all the original dome master files, and then physically send it back to you. But that's not always practical, and that's not even always necessary, to be honest. I've done this several times already, and it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. So if you're interested in doing that sort of thing of transferring your dome masters to somebody else, I would suggest trying this. It doesn't hurt anything. This is a good time to mention the preview area, the area at the top. It literally says preview. It has a little sidebar that you can access using the view menu, and there you can find the proxies. And using the proxies is what can make your video editing run much more smoothly as you're editing. What it does is it lowers the resolution that Blender tries to output in the preview area, so things run much more smoothly. And so I set it to 25% when I'm just trying to like cut and edit stuff. But when I need to really see a particular frame in detail, like I'm doing a transition and I want to make sure things work really, really well, then I just switch it back to 100%. And you can just toggle back and forth, and that really speeds it up. And even though building, quote unquote, building proxies can take a little while when you first import a video, you just, go get a cup of coffee or something, or you can even do something else while it's running in the background. All right, next one is slide number 15. This is another demo file illustrating just another use case, and it's batch image processing. So to explain this a little more, my planetarium system really likes square images, and I like 1024 by 1024, but very few images I get from, say, NASA or wherever else are automatically in that square format. So I can go into Photoshop and one by one, and this is what I used to do, honestly. I used to one by one change them. And I also like to feather the edges of my images. It makes them look a little better on the dome. And so I used to do that literally individually for each image that I would use in my presentations. But with Blender, you can do that all together, all at once with no problem. And it's way easier, and it just renders out exactly what you need. Rachel, did you have a question?
Yes. So the ones that I downloaded that we've been messing with, there's no image in it. Is there, like, I see it in the channels, but it's not showing up in the top middle screen.
Okay, let me take a look. So if I open my batch image editor, that's what I see. Is anyone else having that issue? Well, do you remember how to add the image in there?
Yes.
Yes, and when you do add it, does it show up then?
Let's see. Yes.
Because it's just a demo. It's not meant to be like a be all end all or final product. So it's just meant to be a demo.
No,
so
I just didn't know if I was like downloading something wrong in Blender. So that's fine.
It might be that, and I can say that that it might be my fault. So if this is happening, I mean, again, it's just a demo. It could have been literally any image, right? I just picked the first thing that popped in my head. That wouldn't be too onerous to download. But as long as you can get images showing up, then that's all I really care about. Slide number 16. This is just showing you the mask that I was using. So I was using a mask to make that feathering effect for each image that I was processing. And then slide number 17. Now this is an actual activity. So sample file number 4 is the lecture editing. This is activities for those people who edit long form lectures and conferences. For example, this is exactly how I'm going to edit this particular recording of this exact presentation. I'm going to edit out all my hiccups, all of the wait, you're muted kind of stuff, so that when people watch it, it's much more fluid and less of a waste of their time. We've gone over how to simply just cut and remove. So if you're doing just a couple of these here and there, then there's not really a need to get this deep into video editing. But for those perfectionists like me who really want to take all that awkward stuff out, these next few slides are for you. And so this kind of just tells you how to use the Power Sequence Editor. It has a dedicated trim tool that can speed things up so much. So you basically click the beginning, you basically select that tool on the left-hand side, and you click the beginning, you click the end, and you click somewhere in the middle of what you want to edit out. So let's say it's just literally one like your speaker said a lot. and you want to cut that out. So you click at the beginning, you click at the end, click at the middle, and then you Shift X. And that's what they call a ripple cut, And what that does is it will not only delete what you want to delete, it will also smush and concatenate all the other strips together so that there's no gap. It says remove the gap is what it's called in Blender. So that's one of the many things that Power Sequencer does. And there's a whole bunch of background stuff as well. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, that left-hand icon that you were starting out with.
This one, the one I highlighted in red.
Is that the power? What's the name of that?
That's the Power Sequencer trim tool.
Okay.
Trim tool. Yeah. So that's one. So if you remember at the beginning, I was like, well, you can customize Blender to act however you want. So this one person, literally one person, decided, hey, I want Blender to do this. So we just programmed it, and now everybody can benefit from it. And there are so many ways to do exactly what I'm talking about. This is just the fastest way for me and my workflow. So I turn that tool on, I click it, I turn that tool on, I click the beginning of where I want to cut. So the beginning so I wanted to cut right here, so I cut right here, and then I click somewhere in the end, and then I click somewhere in the middle. It doesn't even matter where in the middle, it just selects that section. And then I Shift X, and that will ripple cut everything, which means it will delete that section that I wanted, and it will also close the gaps. Because normally in Blender, what you have to do is you have to select everything, cut it, select everything, cut it again, select everything, delete it, then move everything, shift everything forward, right? So all of those actions can be done with 4 clicks, right? We're using the Power Sequence Editor.
That's helpful to use your mouse, because that makes things
yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Jeff, this is Tish again.
Go ahead, Tish.
I'm really nervous about making mistakes and starting over, and am I going to totally mess up the whole project,
Well, this is actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Tish, because one of the best things about Blender is that it's non-destructive video editing. What that means is it doesn't actually change your video, your source video. Does that make sense? So you can edit in Blender without ever worrying about messing up your original recording.
That's great.
It will not touch your original recording. It doesn't do it at all.
At the end, you save it as a copy or something?
No, you render it as a separate video.
Oh.
Right? So it does require some storage space. So if you have a huge giant file, you're going to end up with 2 giant files. Does that make sense? So make sure you have the storage space, but that's the benefit of using Blender, is that it's non-destructive.
Yeah.
And
Thank
also
you
the
so
file.
much for
Yeah,
this. You were really kind to do this for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tish. Thank you so much for saying that. It's my genuine pleasure. I'm working today, but Alan, I've done stuff when I'm on my days off, so all the time. So it's my genuine pleasure, Tish. And yeah, so in addition, because you know how when you're using Photoshop or GIMP, those GIMP files get really, really big because it contains that image data right inside. But Blender doesn't do that. The Blender files, you'll notice each Blender file is really tiny. I'm just referencing the assets, and it's not actually destroying anything or taking anything away from those original source files, right? So that's the benefit. So if you're worried about messing up, Tish, I can assure you that you won't mess anything up in your original video if you're playing with Blender.
I feel like I can jump right in.
Thanks. Great, yeah. Just jump right in. And if you make a mistake, we'll cover this later. But if you make a mistake, just it's okay to just completely scrub it and start over. And people are scared of quote unquote wasting their time, but it's all learning, right? I don't think learning is a waste of time at all. I think whatever workflow that you have, whatever learning process you have, is a worthwhile use of your time. Period. I don't think it's a waste of time if you go in there and you mess something up and now I have to start over. I don't think that's a waste of time. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, moving on to slide number 18. Okay, this is where we get kind of into the nitty-gritty, because the basics of video editing, we just covered it. You're all set, actually. We're going to start getting into slightly more advanced stuff, And if you don't feel like you're ready for this, don't feel like you have to do it right now. Again, this recording is going to be posted. And so always just come back when you're ready when you feel like you're ready for the next step. Like right now, with what I've told you right now, you're ready to do almost any sort of video editing you could possibly imagine as a beginner, right? This particular slide is all about making your video editing faster. So this is just one example of how you can create your own custom shortcuts to do exactly what you want when you want it, and to save you that extra bit of, carpal tunnel even if you're worried about that. So again, it's just a really simple thing of you go to edit menu, there's a preferences, there's a section called key map, and that will show you literally every single keyboard shortcut that is in Blender. And you can even add new ones to specific sections. So this one tells you about the specific power sequence editor. It's called the trim tool. So you have to look for the sequence editor tool, sequencer, trim. It sounds complicated, but just take your time with it. It's just a matter of looking through a bunch of menus, right? It's not more difficult than that, at least. And then you just change it. So what I've done here is I just changed my right mouse button to make it so that it will change the frames. So when I ripple cut and when I'm changing the frames, normally you have to, do a whole bunch of stuff. You have to move your mouse up or move your mouse down and collect the right place. But this one, you just right click, and you can even right click and drag. And that will take care of that. Again, this is an advanced tip. If you're feeling like this is too much, then just skip this. It's fine. I'm ready for some more free exploration. So there's just one thing I wanted to mention on this slide is that NASA does have a film contest. So if you've never heard of CineSpace, it's called CineSpace, C-I-N-E space, CineSpace. The grand prize is $10,000 for the best NASA short film. If you've never heard of this contest, please go check it out. And especially if you're a planetarium or a museum and you want to screen the winners, they also handle that. Please just go check them out. I think it's a really great program. And at the very least, they have content for you to show in your theaters. At the very least, okay. And they're really very good. Like last year, there were like 10 finalists, I think, and each one of them made me cry and laugh and cry again, and it's all really cool to what people can create these days. And it just goes back to one of my beginning points of video is the medium of today. That's just how it is. And so if you want to make an impact in your community, online, in your business, in your organization, video is just the way to do it these days. And there's not much more to say about that. To the green screening, which is something that I created for somebody, and that's just activity number 5. It's called node editing, and it sounds really complicated, but I'm hoping that these slides are as straightforward as I could make them. And basically you open this up, and this is called compositing in Blender, compositing. And it just uses all these nodes to literally program Blender to do whatever you want, basically. The best thing about Blender is that it's not just art, it's computer science too. You're thinking critically, you're logically thinking, you're programming Blender to do what you want. So if you ever wanted some sort of like art/science curriculum for your workshops, Blender can be it. Okay, so you open this up, and I kept the render layers here because if you're ever doing anything else in Blender, you're going to need that node. So that node is very important if you're doing anything else in Blender. But for video editing specifically, you just delete it. For video editing, you don't need it. And instead, you add 3 more nodes. So nodes are just these boxes. It takes an input, it does something, and then it outputs something. Hopefully that makes sense. And so the three that we need for green screening are the movie clip, the keying, and the viewer node. So that's the 3 that we need. And so once you just add them in, again, there's a whole add menu, and you can just search for it. Each one of these, each node does something amazing. And I could spend literally an entire course just going over every single node in there. Like it's very, very easily could be like a whole week summer camp just going over nodes. But if we're just green screening, you search for the movie clip one, you search for the keying one, and you search for the viewer one. It'll kind of pop up, and then you add each one, and then it should come up. And I just added whatever the movie that I had. This little folder will open up File Explorer, and you pick the movie that you want, load it up, and you just need to connect the output to the input. Again, connecting the input all the way down here, connecting this output all the way to this input for the viewer. And this one is for the final, this is the composite node, is for the final product. If you don't have that node and you render it, it won't give you anything, essentially. And as soon as you connect these up, you'll notice that it does something. Like this guy is now transparent, you'll notice. But you want the green screen to be transparent. So that's on to slide number 23. So on the green screen, all you have to do is click the little color. It looks white, but it's supposed to be all the colors. And then it will give you a pop-up, and there's a tiny little eyedropper right over here. You click that, and then you just click somewhere on the green screen that you want to. I've found that clicking the darker parts of your green screen, like if you have a shadow, I found that works better, but you're just gonna have to try it with your own footage and see what works best for you. And there are ways to tweak it. In fact, we'll go to the next one. And so I just clicked that one thing, and then this is what I got. But if I wanted to tweak it a little better, first of all, you'd want to take the matte output for this keying node and connect it back to the image. So you connect that to the image. That will actually give you a black and white representation of the keying node, of what the keying node is actually doing. And once you have that black and white representation, it's much easier to see. In fact, I can show it to you here. So I'm just going to run through it real quickly. Delete the renders. Like we saying, I'm going to look for the movie clip one. I'm going to look for the keying one. And I'm going to look for the viewer node. Now, there is actually a program, there is actually an add-on for this. It's called Node Wrangler. That will actually do all this for you in just a couple of clicks. Again, if you're doing something in Blender and it seems tedious, there are always shortcuts to do it. And then I want to open my movie. I need the backdrop too. There you go. Right? Forgot about the backdrop up there. Okay. And then we go, I want to pick this screen right here. And there we go. Now, so this is my green screen. So you can see this part is all transparent now. It's pretty good, actually, just right off the bat, it's pretty good. But if I wanted to actually see, I'm going to take that matte node, I'm going to click that tiny little dot, and drag it to the viewer node. And this is what Blender's actually doing. It's a black and white representation of what Blender's actually doing. You'll see that this part actually isn't perfect. Even though it looked visually perfect, it looked visually fine, right? I couldn't even tell that it's messed up. But if you did want it perfectly perfect, again, it determines how perfectionist you are, right? And even this section up here wasn't that great. And I can change that up here. I can tweak it. It depends on how good your green screen footage is in the beginning. But, if you have to do it, then you have to do it, okay? All right, and then just make sure you plug it back up. There you go, okay. So that's the green screen that I wanted to mention. This one is just a demo one that I made, and it's just showing a very complex node tree. Well, I wouldn't even call it very complex. I'd call it actually relatively simple, but it looks complex, and I've commented it all. Again, I've included an obscene amount of comments into the nodes to help you kind of figure out what's actually going on in each section. So you just scroll in, zoom around, middle click will help you move around, explore that to your heart's content. Hopefully it'll illuminate something for you in terms of green screening, if that's what you're into. And then I just wanted to mention, at least, just briefly mention that Blender does do motion tracking. So this file, if you play it, I gave the little kid a birthday hat that will track with his head as the camera moves. So you can do that, and you can do some really cool things. Like you can give people helmets. You can give people, you can have people holding telescopes or whatever it is you can imagine. Anything you can imagine, you can do in Blender. All right, slide number 27 is where I am now.
Lisa had a question.
Hi, January 1st, 2022, section 508 for closed captioning for adaptability for blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing was implemented. And NOAA continued and rolled out the sections with all of this with American Sign Language interpreters or closed captioning on all of their content. NASA has continued to follow the lead with the alt text. So if you are an individual that is needing those services, section 508 is the federal guidelines to follow for inclusion of all. Otter AI is what I would normally use, but YouTube, etc., you have to type in everything personally.
Yeah. All right. So this is a way to create captions. Now, hopefully, you know that you can create your own captions through a myriad of ways. Okay, a myriad of ways. There's like an actual dedicated subtitling tool that was on Domel not too long ago. YouTube can, like Lisa mentioned, YouTube can do it for you. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it. Blender is just another way to do it.
So if you have files that are closed captions, can you use the add menu to add the closed captions to a certain video?
Say an SRT file, right, Rachel? Yeah, if you have an SRT file already, then you can import it into Blender. It doesn't support it natively right now, but there is somebody who's made an add-on. So if you really need to do that, just let me know and I can send you the link to that add-on. I haven't tried it myself because a lot of people might know this about me, but I'm a live presenter person, so I don't ever do like films and I don't have to ever worry about SRT files. But what I do with this one, the way that I use it is that it's a really great way to create quick text that is outlined really nicely. Like I can make a nice little feather outline for each letter, and it looks really nice on the dome, and it stands out whether I have like the blue sky or the dark sky. Like I really like it that way, and so I create like little text question cards for it, and any sort of labeling that I want. So again, there is a way to import SRT files into Blender, and there's a way to get SRT files out of Blender once you have the text. And again, you can change the color, size, whatever you need. Okay.
Is there? I see an export.
Thank you.
I see the export. Is there?
Yes.
Is there? Where's the import?
No, the import. It's separate. It's not built in right now, but somebody out there did make a special program to import SRT files. Again, I haven't tried it. I can only reference you to it. Did that answer your question, Rachel? Hopefully, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. And again, email me later if you really need more help. And then we were supposed to have free exploration time, but I'm going to totally skip that. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is the Alliance has a new website. It's called NASA Connects. If you feel like registering here, it's free, of course. It's all funded by NASA, and it's just a community where we can chat and talk. Yeah, that's all. And that's where we're moving all of our stuff. And so, for example, these slides and everything are going to live on that website. And then I want to say thanks for sticking it out for so long. And my favorite quote these days is that art is never finished, only abandoned. And then at the very end, before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention that for those people who are ready for the next step, whenever you're ready for the next step, there are lots of advanced tools to help you speed up your workflow even more. So a lot of people have heard of FFmpeg. I find FFmpeg very useful for compressing files. For whatever reason, FFmpeg has amazing file compression. This goes back to the whole idea of why video is so powerful these days, because video compression and being able to stream videos live right now, like literally as we're doing right now, that's become so powerful. I've taken like Blender videos and I've shrunk them by 80%. or more. That's a huge savings if file storage matters to you. So these two slides tell you how to do it whenever you're ready for that step. And then there's something called BPS render, which speeds up your video rendering by a factor of 2 or 3 at least. And these two slides handle that. I didn't mean for this to be part of the workshop anyway, but I did want to mention it for any of those people who are both advanced or going to be advanced when you are. And I should mention that advanced does not mean difficult. Okay, advanced does not mean difficult. I hope you'll see that the steps to actually do them are actually very simple. You type some stuff into a computer. How hard is that? My philosophy is that if I can do it, anyone can do it. Now, I was a B student in college. I'm very proud of that, actually. And if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. And it's just a matter of typing the right thing at the right time in the right place, honestly. And so I've tried to do that here with these slides. So BPS rendering, it will make your video rendering faster. And then the last one is called Flamenco. This one's a little more involved, again, whenever you're ready for this. But the most powerful thing about Flamenco is that it helps you make your own render farm. So if you have a planetarium with a whole bunch of render computers already, guess what? You can turn your planetarium computers into your very own render farm and make your renders like 6 times faster, 5 times faster, however many renders you have. Again, it's not difficult. It's just the next step whenever you're ready for it. And in fact, the Blender conference, actually, the Blender 2022 conference is happening right now. And yesterday, the creator of Flamenco gave a talk. He could talk for a whole hour all about Flamenco.
There's one question. Rosemary said, "Can the green screen technique be used to create a transparent background in a video?"
He just records himself in Zoom. Yeah,
like in a planetarium show where you may have a person that you've interviewed and you want that video to be there, but you actually want your planetarium sky or something in the background. So you want to leave it. You want to leave it transparent as opposed to putting another image in.
Yes. Yes, that's how you would do it, I guess. So QuickTime is the only one, and you just need to make sure that you have the RGBA selected. Do you see it on the side? Right here. RGBA has to be selected. If that's not selected, you're just going to get black instead of a transparent one. I hope this has at least opened the door for you, or at least opened your eyes to what is possible for you in your organization, whether that's for your social media, whether that's actual Dome content, whether that's just your family videos even. The possibilities are quite literally endless, and I hope you give it a try. And always, please just email me. You should have my email. If you're here listening to my voice, you should have my email already. The NASA Connects, I'm always there. DomeL, the Dome Dialogues, whatever you want to talk, I'm happy to do that. Thanks to anyone who's watching the recording. Have a great day.